But when you get to this, it does feel like two guys, certainly Onama, that's a name that's certainly been on the rise. And then Steve Garcia, the mean machine, just the way he goes out there and has been able to dominate opponents and get them out. What's the key for Onama? Is it to avoid the pressure fighter that Steve Garcia could be and not make this kind of a close phone booth fight and have space to use what we think would be some naturally God given advantages he might have athletically?
Yeah, that's a great setup there, and you're right. This is a real hardcore, hardcore main event. I know people can be a little dour on the Apex fights, but I'm actually really glad they're giving guys like Onama and Garcia here featherweights that bring fireworks to the main event, and a great dynamic there as far as the pressure goes. But you use the word space, Dave. And I just want to point out this is the UFC Apex, like we just said, which is a smaller octagon. So whether you're a Sun Tzu Art of War fan or you're just a degenerate gambler, right? The fighting surface matters, right?
That's
That's and I got some Apex stats for you. Steve Garcia actually 5-0 inside that UFC Apex, Dave. He's 6-0 in that Apex if you count his Dana White Contender Series. Where on the other side you got Onama is 3-1 in that UFC Apex, and he is 1-0 officially against UFC level southpaws. Okay, so the thing is he will be the more flexible fighter, to your point, to deal with pressure, right? But to your question, is he going to have that space? And I'm not sure, especially when Onama arguably does his best work off the front foot. And, Dave, these are the toughest fights to break down, like back when a prime Tony Ferguson would fight another pressure fighter, you're like, okay, who's going to be the guy that doesn't move forward for once, and that's kind of tricky. Steve Garcia showed he had a different gear in his last fight against Calvin Cater. And it's enough to get him the favorite spot here. But man, I'm not sure how confident you can be on either side of this, if I'm being quite honest, Dave.
Yeah, and I do like that if you like the Garcia side with that smaller octagon at the apex to put that pressure there. And that's why you don't see this very often, certainly with featherweights, where the total, as we talk on Wednesday, Dan, is sitting at 1.5 for a potential 5 round main event. You do not see this in featherweight fighting, and it's juiced only to $1.20 to the over 7.5 minutes. Look, Garcia doesn't want to get paid by the minute, right? He likes to go in there, get his work done. Onama maybe could go a little bit longer if you like that side. Do you think it's correlated that way? That if you look to Garcia, you look to an under, and the pressure that he has and the power that he has is just too much for Onama? Or if you like the smaller dog in Onama, he's able to extend Garcia. He's able to get him deeper into that late second round, potentially a third round and beyond.
It's a great dynamic. Absolutely. I would attach Garcia more to the under here. And even though, again, I don't feel like either fighter should be drastically favored, I think close to pick him is correct. I also would slightly favor Garcia, but those two things being said, I almost feel like the value here, we're bettors. We speak to a lot of bettors here, Dave. It feels like over or pass from a contrarian point of view because, again, these guys, as many fighters do, they're expected to go to decision more the higher in competition. This is a very high stakes and important fight. So, and the first time these guys are going 5 rounds, at least in the UFC, Garcia is the one fighter with 5 round experience prior, but that's way back in the regionals. So actually would expect a tentative first round. This also could be a low key. You're not going to get a great price on it, but I know a lot of people love to parlay those little cheeky fight starts round 2 legs,
Yes.
and that could be very much in play here. And if you like Onama and the plus money isn't that juicy for you, I say you play the hot rounds, and I think that's 2, 3, and 4 for the Onama side, under for the Garcia to Dave's point. But if you are looking at that Onama side, I say bet rounds 2, 3, and 4. Maybe fight to end round 2 if you're at a cheeky book. That round 2 is going to be the hot round. That's why it's set at 1.5.
Dan, I'm still scarred from my overplay last week in the main event with Cyril Gahn and Tom Aspinall, and I rebetted it a bunch of different times because Dan, that fight is going over 1.5 for the first time with Aspinall, and then boom, we
Yes,
get the Three
yes.
Stooges eye poke. So I'm a little scarred going back, but I do lean towards the over again in this main event at minus $1.20. Very quickly, main event. I got to ask you about that. I will be on the over 1.5, even though I'm still tainted from last week. And Cyril Gahn thought we were going to get there. But I do think that I like Steve Garcia. I like the side. I'll probably end up getting there as well. But the respect that I have for Onama and that athleticism, that he can maybe keep some distance early on, try to keep this clean technical as much as Onama can early. But I think eventually the pressure of Steve Garcia will get there. But I do think it's going to take a little bit longer than 7.5 minutes. What's the model showing you?
The model shows it's close, and the odds show that it's close, right? They have very similar XR percentages, both 60% up. Their striking is actually very similar. You're talking about two guys who are the huge difference is Garcia's hard to hit. That'll be the difference. They both have high output, 4 significant plus strikes landed per minute, but Garcia only absorbs 1.95, and that's great for someone who's landing above 4 significant strikes per minute. Because usually it's a crazy exchange, right? That
Right.
you're landing these strikes, like Ardeline's numbers, right? She's still absorbing 5. He's only absorbing 1.95. So Onama absorbs 4.73. So it's huge. Now, Onama has 4 knockdowns in the UFC. Garcia's been knocked down, um, 7 times, I believe.
Mm,
I'll have to let me double check that real quick. He's been
sure.
knocked Yeah, he's been knocked down 5 times. I apologize. But that's a concern, right?
Yeah,
Because if
alarming.
Onama can land the punch, he's on the floor. Now he does have a great win streak going, Garcia, so he's not exactly someone who's been knocked out a bunch of times. He's only been knocked out once. But so to your point, I think it's something they're both going to be careful of each other's powers, and it's a reason to be cautious in that first round, head into the second round. It's crazy for a 5-round fight to have a 1.5 total, especially at this weight class. But the model does go Steve Garcia's way. It likes everything it sees, and once again, a reason to for me to look at the numbers on Monday. I mean, I grabbed him at -125. Actually, he was -130 Monday. I grabbed him yesterday -125. Today he's -135. Model gives him 75% win probability. I like the number at -125, and what is a smaller number for a main event we've seen in a couple weeks, if
Yeah,
to be
man.
honest, for the favorite.
Absolutely. We normally don't see this. And even in the main cards we talked about with Dan, you look at those last 3 fights, they're all pretty closely aligned here. So I understand it, but I'm with you. I'm on the Steve Garcia side here, as much respect. And as many times I've bet David Onama as a big dog. I don't know that the pressure fighter that Steve Garcia can be, the mean machine, if it's going to be enough. But I just think it'll take longer to do that. But I think eventually he will wear down David Onama and get this job done.